Sir, step away from the gate. I already told you. My boarding pass is valid. Security is on the way. Do not move. Marcus Reed, 17, stood frozen beneath the white-blue terminal lights of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, a backpack loosely hanging from one shoulder, the other hand gripping a neatly folded blazer his mother insisted he bring. He looked calm, but inside him something trembled, confusion, then disbelief. Around him, rolling suitcases slowed. People stared. Opposite him stood flight attendant Evelyn Hart, mid-40s, crisp uniform, voice clipped like metal doors closing. Her eyes measured him, doubtful, tightened by suspicion rather than certainty. "You're not cleared for first class," she repeated. "We have procedures." Marcus swallowed, holding out his phone once more. "My seat is two-way. I've checked in. Twice." Her hand barely flickered. She didn't take the device. A radio crackled at her hip. Somewhere, a police code whispered through. Down the corridor, two airport officers advanced, neon vests reflecting off polished tile. Their steps were slow but deliberate, echoing like distant thunder. Marcus's heart kicked hard. His father, CO Jonathan Reed, should have been beside him, but a delayed connection separated them an hour earlier. Now Marcus stood alone, a young man judged as inconvenient before he could even sit down. Passengers murmured. A woman with silver hair frowned toward Marcus, then toward Evelyn, but said nothing. A man tucked his magazine lower, pretending to read while watching every second. Marcus breathed deep. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I have a meeting in Seattle tomorrow. I have to be on this flight." Evelyn's jaw set. "Maybe you do, but I don't believe this is your ticket." A pause. Sharp. Unfair. The officers reached them. "Problem here?" one asked. Evelyn gestured toward Marcus, confident, as if closing a case. "Possible fraud. He claims first-class access without authorization." Marcus opened his screen, boarding pass bright, undeniable. Yet their eyes moved slower than truth. One officer reached for his radio. Another studied Marcus with a look that said caution first, questions later. And then, over the intercom, a final call chime rang. Passengers boarded. Time thin like breath in winter air. Marcus felt the moment tightening. His future, his dignity, his name. None of them knew who awaited this very flight. None knew the new director the Seattle board was expecting. And he didn't know whether they'd let him take his seat long enough to prove it. Enjoying this? Tap subscribe for tomorrow's story. Marcus stood very still, stillness the way his father taught him when stress tried to take over. Count your breath. Anchor your voice. But even controlled breathing could not dim the sting of being doubted in front of strangers. The officers flanked him now, not aggressive, just present. A space formed around them, a circle no one crossed. Evelyn Hart folded her arms, satisfied she had followed protocol. "Name?" the first officer asked. "Marcus Reed." His own voice sounded steadier than he felt. The second officer lifted a scanner. "Boarding pass, please." Marcus extended the phone. This time the device was taken, finally scanned. A soft confirmed tone chirped, approved. A tiny sound, but it pulsed through Marcus like rescue. The officer paused. His brows twitched. "Ticket shows correct. First class Seattle. Checked in at 3:42 p.m. Evelyn blinked. "Run it again." Another scan. Another confirm. The passengers watching shifted, whispers like papers rustling. The officer nodded. "Everything's valid." Evelyn inhaled slow, controlled. "That may be so, but it still doesn't explain." Marcus met her eyes for the first time fully. "I told you I belonged here." She held his gaze 1 second too long, then looked aside. But she didn't apologize, no softening, no step back. Procedure had protected her from doubt, and protocol had framed her certainty. A new announcement rolled through the terminal. Final boarding for Flight 218 to Seattle. First class and priority passengers only. Marcus exhaled shakily. He stepped toward the gate, but Evelyn sidestepped to block him again. "No," she pointed to his bag. "Additional screening first. Secondary check." Her tone sounded firm, but beneath it there lay something uncertain, almost defensive. Marcus hesitated. Officers waited. Others were already lining up beyond the gate, boarding in calm streams. The Seattle sky called beyond that tunnel of carpet and light. He needed to be on board before the door sealed. His father Jonathan's words echoed. Doors close on opportunity when you look away for even one moment. Ma'am, I have complied, Marcus said softly. You scanned me. Everything cleared. Why more checks? Evelyn didn't answer right away. It felt like she was searching for a rationale she hadn't needed minutes before. Standard procedure, she finally said. Security discretion. But the officers knew this wasn't standard. Their shared glance said so. Still, neither moved to intervene. Marcus swallowed. They didn't know he was supposed to debut tomorrow as youth development director after 2 years of internships and 1 year of quiet training. His father had planned it as symbolic, a younger voice in the boardroom, bridging staff and leadership. Marcus never asked for privilege, but he worked for position. Yet now here, none of that mattered. Marcus, the voice came from behind. A woman in a navy trench coat approached, a stranger, mid-60s, gentle-eyed, holding her boarding pass in one hand and a travel pillow in the other. Her name tag read Dr. Carol Whitman. I saw everything, she said quietly to the officers. His ticket was valid from the start. The pause before scanning, there was no reason for it. Evelyn stiffened. Ma'am, passengers do not determine procedure. Dr. Whitman's voice stayed calm. No, but truth does. She stepped beside Marcus, not shielding, but standing with him. A choice. A witness. The line of boarding passengers narrowed. Staff began closing the rope. Time was thinning again. Marcus looked at the officers, at Evelyn, at the gate to everything waiting beyond. This moment would decide whether he boarded as a passenger or fought as someone determined to be seen. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Dr. Whitman stood steady at Marcus's side, like a small lighthouse in a stormy terminal. The officers watched Evelyn. Evelyn watched the boarding door. Marcus watched everything at once, the passing seconds, the shrinking path to his seat, the wall of disbelief holding him back. Then Evelyn spoke. We have procedures, she repeated, softer now, but still firm. I cannot allow boarding until I confirm identity beyond the ticket. Marcus felt heat behind his eyes, not anger, but a tired ache. He had shown proof. He had answered questions. Still, more was demanded. Dr. Whitman gently asked, and how will you confirm it? Evelyn hesitated. Her gaze flicked to Marcus's blazer, to his backpack, to nothing in particular, as if waiting for a flaw to reveal itself. Marcus opened his wallet. Inside, his photo ID, his student card, a badge from Reed & Associates from summer training. He placed them carefully onto the podium, not slamming them, not challenging, just laying truth plainly where anyone could see it. The officers leaned in. One nodded. It matches his boarding pass. Everything aligns. Evelyn said nothing. Passengers shuffled past, filling first class. A boarding agent behind the counter glanced over anxiously. Gate closing in 2 minutes. Marcus breathed smart and slow. His father had always insisted, hold dignity even when others offer none. But every second felt like thread fraying. He spoke clearly, gently. Ma'am, I've given you everything required. If there is a rule I haven't followed, tell me. If not, please let me board. His voice didn't shake. It grew. Evelyn steadied herself, but the steel in her eyes softened into uncertainty. Still, pride held her posture upright, unwilling to yield to a boy she had already judged. She looked toward the officers for reinforcement, but they stayed neutral. She looked at Dr. Whitman, who offered no argument, only patient expectation. Pressure shifted, now into silence itself. At last, Evelyn exhaled. Fine. Proceed. The rope lifted. Marcus stepped forward, one careful step, then another. But as he reached for the boarding tunnel, movement sparked behind him. A businessman, tall, impatient, called out, Hold on, he gets through even after all that? His tone carried more frustration than words alone. A few passengers murmured agreement, though none had seen the scans, the ID, the patience it took to stand still. Evelyn's hand rose unconsciously, as if habitually ready to block again. Marcus turned, calm but firm. I waited. I proved what I needed to. I just want to take my seat. The businessman muttered, Still doesn't look like. Dr. Whitman's voice cut through gently. Sir, dignity isn't something we license by appearance. The terminal quieted. The tension did not vanish, but it cracked. Marcus nodded once to her, gratitude barely contained. He walked down a jet bridge. Cool air from inside the plane touched his face like relief. Soft cabin lights glowed warm amber ahead. A flight attendant at the plane door, different uniform, different eyes, smiled politely. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Reed." Two words that felt like sunrise. But as Marcus stepped inside, he noticed something unexpected. Evelyn followed him down the bridge, face thoughtful, almost troubled, as though she sensed something unfinished. And Marcus had no idea that tomorrow morning, when he walked into that boardroom in Seattle, this entire flight crew would be there, waiting to learn the identity of their new director. The cabin felt like a different world, quiet, controlled, a hush beneath overhead bins and softened lights. Marcus found his seat, two-way by the window. Wide leather, polished armrest, a folded blanket like untouched snow. A glass of water waited, beads of condensation catching light like tiny stars. He sat slowly, breathing deeper now. The tension hadn't vanished. It lingered like a shadow at his back, but relief settled over him in waves. He placed his blazer neatly beside him, hands folded atop his backpack. Passengers continued to board, murmurs blending with a hum of vented air. Some glanced at Marcus, others avoided looking at him at all, discomfort hanging like mist. Minutes later, Evelyn entered the cabin. She paused near row 2, not speaking, just observing. She seemed smaller now without the barrier of a podium or the momentum of procedure. Her gaze lingered on Marcus's ID badge, still clipped to his bag. Something unreadable crossed her face, perhaps realization or regret. Another attendant, smiling, bright, leaned in. "Would you like sparkling or still, Mr. Reed?" Marcus answered softly, "Still, please." Her smile remained. "Of course." He thanked her gently, careful not to speak too loud, not to disturb the uneasy balance of the moment. A few seats behind, the impatient businessman from the gate muttered something under his breath. A woman beside him gave a polite shh, and the cabin settled. Captain's voice crackled overhead. "Flight time to Seattle is 4 hours and 18 minutes. Weather clear. We expect smooth skies." Marcus rested his head against the seat. Tomorrow he would step into a boardroom for the first time not as observer, but as decision-maker, the role his father prepared him for quietly. Youth director at 18. Young, yes, but trained. Ready. Yet tonight's encounter gnawed at him. He earned his position, but assumptions nearly grounded him before he could even board. Privilege meant little when unseen. Progress meant nothing without recognition. Dr. Whitman passed him on her way to her seat across the aisle. She paused, touched his shoulder lightly, not pity, just presence. "You handled yourself well," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "Thank you for stepping forward." "Silence helps no one," she replied, "especially when truth stands alone." Then she took her seat, book in hand, page unturned as she watched him one more moment. Evelyn moved down the row with the passenger manifest in hand. When she reached Marcus, her voice was measured, but no longer cold. "Mr. Reed," she said quietly, "if I caused inconvenience, that was not my intent." A step, a pause. Marcus met her eyes. He didn't speak resentment, only truth. "I understand caution," he said, "but caution shouldn't become assumption." Evelyn absorbed that like a slow breath. Noted, but neither of them realized the significance of that small exchange. The way words now spoken quietly would echo loudly soon. The aircraft pushed back. Engines rumbled, steady like a heartbeat. The runway lights streaked past as momentum carried them forward. Faster, higher, Dallas shrinking beneath them as they broke into sky. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, unaware that the very airline involved tonight had already scheduled a policy evaluation meeting in Seattle the next morning. Unaware that he, not his father, was expected to lead it. And unaware that Evelyn would be in that room, still holding the memory of a moment she could not yet shake. Hours passed beneath the hum of engines and dimmed cabin lights. Most passengers slept or drifted in and out, shifting, sighing, cradling neck pillows like softened armor against exhaustion. But Marcus remained awake, eyes half-focused on the window where night stretched endless, starless over the plains. He replayed the gate scene quietly, every sentence, every hesitation. It didn't hurt as sharply now, but the memory settled like a weight on his chest. Not bitterness, just a quiet awareness that respect can be fragile, conditional, withheld until proven. He opened a small leather notebook, a habit his father encouraged. On the first blank page he wrote, "People shouldn't need defense to be treated fairly." He underlined it once. He didn't know he would read that line aloud tomorrow to a room where some would nod and some would flinch. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Reed." Evelyn stood beside him, postured gentle now, not authoritative. She held a cup of tea in both hands, a peace offering without words. "I thought you might like something warm," she said quietly. Marcus accepted it with care. "Thank you." Evelyn did not leave immediately. She looked as though she carried something unsaid, a truth too heavy for simple apology. "When you first came to the gate," she began, "I assumed you were in the wrong line. I thought I was doing my job. But after the scan cleared, I should have stepped back." She swallowed. "I let my doubts speak louder than your proof." Marcus didn't rescue her from discomfort. He let silence make room for honesty. Finally he answered, steady as calm water. "It takes reflection to say that." "I appreciate it." She nodded slowly, almost relieved, but also unsettled. "Regret is a long flight." "Tomorrow," she added cautiously, "our airline leadership is meeting with someone from Reed and Associates. There's talk of new policy oversight. You may hear about it." Marcus blinked, but kept his expression neutral. She didn't know. Not yet. But the seed of tomorrow's twist had just been planted, unaware. Dr. Whitman, awake across the aisle, observed quietly. Her gaze held a blend of hope and concern, like someone who has lived long enough to know how slow change can be. Outside the window, clouds pulled back like curtains. A thin line of dawn broke across the horizon, soft gold, rising. Something shifted in Marcus then. His chest no longer tight, but open. Not healed, but growing. He took a slow sip of tea. Warm. Grounding. Then he said something Evelyn wouldn't forget. "People's assumptions are like shadows. You only see them when the light is behind you." She inhaled, startled by the truth wrapped in youth. Then she stepped back, quiet, thoughtful. The aircraft descended toward Seattle, wheels lowering with a soft mechanical sigh. City lights sparkled beneath clouds, like scattered promise. Marcus closed his notebook gently. A new chapter waited beyond the runway. Boardrooms, eyes watching, decisions looming. And there, standing among them, would be Evelyn, facing the boy she doubted, now revealed as far more than a passenger. As the plane touched down soft and steady, Marcus felt the weight shift again. Not away, but forward. Tomorrow, the story would turn. Morning came crisp and silver over Seattle, the airport wrapped in low clouds like a city still waking. Marcus stepped off the aircraft with his blazer on, posture tall, eyes steady. No one rushing through the terminal knew his name, but soon many would. Evelyn disembarked behind him, her expression reserved. She expected to go home after debriefing. Instead, a message waited on her phone. The airline requested her presence in the downtown office by 9:30 a.m. Policy review, attendance mandatory. Her pulse flickered. Policy review rarely included flight staff. Something in her chest tightened. Marcus's father, Jonathan Reed, met him at baggage claim, a firm handshake, then an embrace that smelled faintly of coffee and winter coat. Jonathan was mid-50s, dignified, CEO of Reed and Associates, a consulting firm specializing in organizational ethics and training. His presence filled space without raising volume. "You made it," Jonathan said. Marcus held his father's gaze. "Yes, but not without difficulty." Jonathan's brows drew together, concern shadowing his calm. "We'll talk in the car." 9:12 a.m., downtown Seattle. First permitted timestamp. The boardroom sat high above the city, windows sweeping across gray sky and cranes along the waterfront. Conference table long polished. Brand executives arriving in navy suits. A tray of untouched scones at the sideboard. Marcus paced quietly near the far window, not nervous, focused. Jonathan entered with the airline's senior leadership, introducing Marcus as he always had, his son, his trainee, his colleague. But today there was a new title to speak aloud. "Before we begin," Jonathan announced, "there is an appointment to confirm." Effective immediately, Marcus Reed will serve as Youth Development Director for our training partnerships, including your airline fleet. The room shifted, surprised glances, quiet shifting of papers, interest sharpened. Evelyn entered then, on time uncertain. She stopped short when she saw Marcus at the head of the table. Recognition swept her face like cold wind, shock, then memory, then realization. He was not just the boy from Gate C-17. He was the man they were here to work with. Her folder trembled in her hands. Jonathan gestured to Marcus. He'll be overseeing new inclusivity protocols for frontline staff, ensuring that every passenger receives equal credibility and respect. We value feedback from employees, so today will be participatory. Murmurs. Pens clicked. Viewpoints shifted. Marcus looked at Evelyn, not vindictive, just present, steady as truth itself. Ms. Hart, he said respectfully, you were on last night's flight. We welcome your perspective. The entire room turned to her. Evelyn's throat tightened. Yesterday, she stood above him unquestioned. Today, she stood accountable, visible. She swallowed, searching for stability in a room full of eyes. Then she spoke, quiet but clear. I made assumptions yesterday, she admitted. Marcus showed every document asked for, and I still hesitated. I believed I was following procedure, but I was following instinct, unchecked, unexamined. Her voice wavered, but she kept going. I realize now that caution without fairness becomes bias. And that moment could have cost him opportunity he earned. The room was still. Her honesty, fragile and brave, cut deeper than reprimand. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you for acknowledging that. We're here today to make sure no passenger experiences uncertainty where dignity is owed. And as Jonathan handed Marcus the agenda, 20 pages thick, no one doubted who led now. The balance had shifted. Not loudly, but unquestionably. Evelyn sat slowly, as if gravity had doubled. The boardroom felt brighter now. Too bright for comfort, bright enough to reveal every hesitation she carried. Marcus, though young, stood at the head of the table with a calm weight older than his age. His notebook lay open before him, the line he had written hours earlier now guiding what came next. He cleared his throat gently. Before we move into policy structure, I want to share something personal. Executives paused mid-page. Even Jonathan looked intrigued. Marcus held up his leather notebook, steady, measured. On the flight here, I wrote one sentence. People shouldn't need defense to be treated fairly. That will be the backbone of our new training initiative. The airline's director of operations, a tall woman named Karen Dorsey, leaned forward. What would implementation look like, Mr. Reed? Marcus nodded, prepared. We start with scenario-based training focused on implicit bias. Not accusation. Awareness. Reflection. We create space for staff to recognize moments where instinct replaces evidence. He glanced briefly toward Evelyn, not shaming, inviting. Moments like last night. Evelyn exhaled, shoulders folding inward. Karen nodded slowly. Executives scribbled notes. What might have been a routine meeting was now a turning point, shaped by a passenger they almost left behind. Then Jonathan added softly, and there's a second matter. He slid a sealed folder across the table toward Evelyn. Inside it, an offer. Formal invitation to join the development board alongside Marcus as staff advisor. Not punishment. Participation. Evelyn froze, breath caught. You want my voice included? Marcus answered, steady and kind. Yes, because change isn't made by perfect people. It's made by people willing to see and grow. Emotion fluttered across her face. Shame, relief, disbelief balancing in fragile harmony. She nodded once slow, eyes lowered in gratitude. But the twist deepened. Karen Dorsey cleared her throat. There's something the board hasn't disclosed until now. She lifted a slim envelope. Customer reports came in from the terminal last night. 3 witnesses described what they saw, including Dr. Carol Whitman. Marcus's head lifted. Dr. Whitman. Karen continued. Dr. Whitman is not only a passenger, she's a retired civil rights consultant. She filed a report praising Marcus's calm under pressure and recommending he be considered for leadership mentorship within our airline, independent of Reed and Associates. Evelyn gasped softly. Marcus blinked, stunned. He expected scrutiny, not endorsement. Karen placed the letter before him. Your conduct didn't just earn you a seat on that plane. It earned you a seat in this room with authority you deserve because you demonstrated leadership before you ever held the title. The entire table shifted, respect now anchored deeply, no longer conditional. Evelyn whispered, barely voice at all, I misjudged you, and you still made room for me to learn. Marcus folded his hands, not triumphant but grounded. We rise together, or not at all. The room fell into thoughtful silence. The twist was complete. The boy they nearly barred from boarding now shaped the policies guiding those who once doubted him. What began with suspicion now forged collaboration, and Evelyn, once gatekeeper, now became advocate. Tomorrow's skies would look different for many. For now, they had work to do. The meeting stretched into late morning, long past the scheduled agenda. They discussed frontline training, evaluation structures, mentorship paths for young hires, and new check-and-confirm protocols designed to prevent assumption from masquerading as authority. It was not smooth, change rarely is, but the room remained attentive. Evelyn contributed quietly at first, voice uncertain, but each time Marcus acknowledged her, she steadied. She described gate procedures, staffing strain, how instinct often filled gaps where guidelines lacked clarity. Her insights were raw, valuable. People listened. When the meeting adjourned, executives filed out with folders under their arms. Some hopeful, some challenged, all altered. The city beyond the glass glowed pale with noonlight. Marcus remained seated, reviewing notes with Jonathan. You handled the room well, his father said softly. Firm, but gracious. Marcus nodded. Grace doesn't erase what happened. But without grace, nothing changes after it. Jonathan smiled faintly, the kind of pride that needed no applause. Evelyn lingered by the doorway, hesitant to approach. But she did. Mr. Reed, she began. Marcus, he corrected gently. She nodded. Marcus, I want you to know I will do the work. Not because I must, but because I see where I failed. I don't want to fail like that again. Marcus considered her words. Regret is important, but responsibility is action. I believe you, he said. But growth needs witnesses. Let people see you change. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with weight released. Then I'll start with one more truth. She swallowed. When I saw you standing at that gate, alone, I thought I was protecting the system. But I was protecting my own comfort. You challenged that, and you deserve better from me. Marcus didn't offer forgiveness like a gift. Instead, he offered partnership. Then let's make sure the next young passenger you meet walks away, knowing they were seen, not measured. Evelyn breathed a quiet yes. A promise made without ceremony. 1:14 p.m., Seattle waterfront, second and final timestamp. Marcus and his father stood outside the glass tower as wind rippled across the water. Ferries drifted slow like silver shapes against gray waves. The world felt wider now, like the horizon had opened a little more. Jonathan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, warm and grounding. You stepped into leadership today, he said. Not because you held authority, but because you carried character. Marcus looked toward the sky where planes carved white trails overhead. I only wish Dr. Whitman could see how it ended, he said quietly. A voice replied from behind them. I wouldn't have missed it. They turned. Dr. Carol Whitman approached with a steady smile, coat billowing lightly in the waterfront breeze. She had been invited to observe the policy signing that afternoon. Papers in her hand showed signatures, Marcus's, and the airlines. You gave them more than criticism, she said. You offered a way forward. Marcus nodded, humbled. Dr. Whitman added, leadership is not avoiding storms. It's guiding others through them. Her words settled like gentle truth. But the day was not done. There were announcements to make, staff to train, a reform initiative to launch across airports nationwide. Marcus was no longer a passenger. He was a voice shaping skies. The fallout had begun, not destruction, but reconstruction. Everything that happened last night now built towards something larger. And those who once doubted him now followed his lead. 2 days later, the airline training center in Seattle bloomed with new purpose. Not loud, not flashy, just focused. Rows of staff sat in a bright auditorium, Navy uniforms crisp, notebooks open. A banner hung modestly behind the podium. Respect is standard, not optional. Marcus stood at center stage, not as symbol, but as teacher. His age no longer loomed over him like doubt. It balanced him, gave him perspective, a reminder of why this mattered. Evelyn sat in the front row, not as bystander, as advisor. She held a microphone lightly between her palms, waiting for her turn. Her posture was straighter now, Not defensive, not rigid. Intentional. Marcus began. When I was stopped at the gate, I felt unseen. Not because of rules, but because proof didn't matter when doubt arrived first. The room was silent, listening. But what changed the outcome wasn't my boarding pass. It was moments of courage. A witness speaking up. A policy willing to grow. A staff member willing to reflect. He offered Evelyn a small nod. She inhaled and stood. When I met Marcus, she told the room, voice steady, I followed procedure without recognizing my assumptions. I asked for proof even after truth stood in front of me. She paused, not in shame, but clarity. And I learned that responsibility is not punishment. It is opportunity. Today, I choose opportunity. No applause. No spectacle. Just the quiet sound of people absorbing truth. Marcus stepped beside her, not above her, and together they outlined a new initiative, scenario training, reflection logs, supervisor review, passenger feedback streamlined, a culture that protects dignity before doubt. When they finished, something remarkable happened. Staff raised their hands, not to challenge, but to contribute. Stories surfaced, small moments where instinct outran fairness, where bias whispered unnoticed. They discussed solutions, not blame. Change didn't bloom in fireworks. It happened like sunrise, slow, inevitable, bright. After the session closed, a young attendant approached Marcus, 20, nervous smile, badge freshly issued. I want to do this work, she said, because someday I'll be standing at that gate. I want to get it right. Marcus returned her smile with quiet warmth. Then you're part of the change. She nodded, grateful. Evelyn lingered near the exit. Marcus, she said. Yes, I keep thinking about that night. At the gate. At the moment I doubted you. She looked him in the eye, not seeking forgiveness, offering growth. You gave me a chance to be better. I won't waste it. Marcus didn't offer a long speech. Just a simple truth. We make mistakes. We learn. We lift each other forward. Evelyn exhaled, the kind of breath that signifies release and beginning all at once. Outside, planes rose into wide blue sky, carrying passengers whose stories would never know this moment shaped the air around them. But Marcus knew. Evelyn knew. Dr. Whitman knew. Jonathan knew. System by system, gate by gate, change had begun. Not by force, by example. 3 months later, Seattle spring arrived gentle and green. Cherry blossoms lined the streets like soft pink lanterns, petals drifting across crosswalks and cafe tables. The wind was mild, the kind that carried possibility rather than cold. Marcus sat in a small corner booth at a waterfront cafe, notebook open, steam rising from a cup of mint tea. He looked older, not in years, but in depth. Confidence no longer a coat he tried on, but a garment that fit naturally. He scribbled a new line across the page. Fairness grows where someone chooses to see. Across from him, Jonathan read quietly, glasses perched low, pride softer now, less spoken, more lived. Their meetings were no longer lessons. They were collaborations. The door chimed, and Evelyn stepped inside with a respectful knock on the table edge, not assuming invitation, but hoping. Marcus closed his notebook and gestured for her to join them. She sat with an ease unimaginable months ago. How was the last rollout in Denver? Marcus asked. Evelyn smiled, full genuine. Better than projected outcome. Staff participation was high. We're scheduling peer-led refreshers each quarter. Voluntary, at first. Now requested. Progress. Not perfect, but real. Jonathan lifted his cup toward her. You helped shape that. Evelyn's voice softened. Marcus made room for me to help shape it. I'm grateful. No grand speeches followed. No swelling music, no bright spotlight. Just 3 people sharing morning light over coffee and tea, knowing the world had shifted because each chose courage over comfort. The cafe window looked out to Puget Sound, where ferry horns sounded low like distant memory. Planes crossed the sky in white arcs, everyone guided by policies they helped create. Somewhere, unknown staff practiced new training. Somewhere, a passenger would walk through a gate and be treated with fairness first. Change left no parade, but it left fewer wounds. Marcus reached inside his bag and withdrew his blazer, the same one he carried that night in Dallas. He had kept it, not as bitterness or proof, but as reminder. Signature object, final appearance. Evelyn noticed, smile growing. Glad you still have it. It reminds me, Marcus said, that even difficult moments can lead us forward. He set it over the back of his chair like a flag no one needed to salute. Just remember. Dr. Whitman entered quietly moments later, older than them all, yet somehow more luminous. She took a seat they saved beside her without words. She didn't ask for updates. She already knew. Some people read change not on paper, but in posture. I knew you would make something of that night, she said gently. Marcus answered with a warm, steady nod. Not alone. She lifted her cup, a toast without ceremony. To progress, she said. To courage, Jonathan added. To seeing people clearly, Evelyn whispered. Marcus lifted his own cup last. To the flight that almost left me behind. They drank. No one spoke for a while. Silence held dignity, not tension. Outside, a gust of wind carried petals across the window like snow in spring. A young couple walked by with suitcases, laughing. The world moved forward, always carrying millions of unnoticed stories. But this story had changed an airport, a crew, a system, and a heart. Sometimes justice is not loud. Sometimes growth is not dramatic. Sometimes progress begins with a single person who refused to disappear quietly. Marcus opened his notebook one last time, writing with calm certainty. Respect is the runway. Fairness is the flight. And somewhere, another plane lifted into sky, lighter because dignity now traveled with it. Andy, thanks for watching.